Boards, games, board games, board games. I might be talking about board games, but I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and I'm talking about the game Catan. This is something that we yesterday ran. We played it, enjoyed it, and now I'll talk a bit more about some stuff about this game. It's one I would play more. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m.ish UK time for Basic Beats and Board Game Bladder. And yes, as you heard, did I enjoy Catan? The answer is yes. And obviously, as is typical, I'm not going to just leave it at there, but I enjoyed Catan. I don't feel inspired to buy back my copy. I don't feel inspired to go off and play lots and lots of it. It's a pleasant game. I think that if anyone was saying, "Oh, do you want to play Catan?" and it was one game that they really enjoyed, I would happily play it with them. As we said yesterday, I don't think there's any game that you have to play. I think it's just a very pleasant game, and so it motivates trading. It can, like, the question of what you can trade. I mean, I think if you start talking about future promises, and if you're the kind of person to be upset by the robber, hey, I'm going to steal from you, and then you stop trading with that person because you're annoyed with them, then this game is going to fall down. But if you are able to enjoy the game despite somewhat, hey, I'm going to steal from you, okay, well, I'll give you this to take that back from you, because it's not personal. Let's talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So yesterday, Chris and Rory played Heart versus Skull, one of the drawn together game sheets. And then it turns out that out of almost 40 people, most of them think that this is a skull, which I would agree with. And yeah, they both enjoyed it. They had a lot of suggestions for potentially it could be an app and how the app could allow people to share, because most of the criticisms were to do with the slight lack of satisfaction at getting an immediate winner. The game does require you to go up to someone else. If you're playing in a public space, you can go up to a stranger and say, hey, what do you think? But if you're playing in a private setting and everyone knows who's going for what, well, then you can't say, hey, who do you think did it better? Was it Rory who was going for this objective or Chris going for that objective? Because that clearly brings in bias. And so then you need to wait for the people, you need to wait for them to give you their opinions. So, yeah, that is that. Let's talk. What else did we do? We had lots of lovely chat. Of course, playing Catan was the big part of the day. Other than that, watching a couple of videos. Decided to go to playtest today, so I'm not going to do the L deck game challenge. I just want to point that out. If you came here for the L deck playtesting, I do apologize. That will happen on a future week. Hopefully, before the end of October, I will announce the winner and the runners-up. But for now, brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? I'm going to say that consideration and, you know what, actually letting things go. Because as I talked about at the start, if in Catan you're like, oh my gosh, you robbed from me, no, I'm not going to give you a good trade. You just robbed from me. No, I'm not going to give you an average trade. You've got to do me 2 of yours for 1 of mine. And you can't hold on to grudges. I think, if anything, that's what Catan kind of tells you, that when you use the robber, you're going to get one resource and you need to think, okay, is it worth me taking from you? Is it worth me taking from you? I might be incentivized by who's got the most points. I might be incentivized by, okay, I've got a vague sense that you've only got wood and you might have something better. So letting go of grudges is a brilliant thing, allows you to move on with everything. As always, feel free to comment, ask questions, thumb, like, follow. And if you've got any specific questions about Catan, like my opinion, or any questions that are totally unrelated to this, I will answer all respectful questions immediately, eventually. Either straight away, if you're watching live and it's on topic. If it's something off topic, I might leave it until a future stream, or yeah. So please, even if you're watching after the fact, do leave your comments. Let's get to Catan. Let's talk about, what is Catan? Catan is a board game made decades ago. For many people, this was the birth of modern Euro games. It has dice, but the dice aren't about rolling and moving. The dice are a form of variance, a form of randomness. The dice determine which dwellings essentially get resources. So sometimes, because of the dice, you get really weird strings. Like, even though we just ended up rolling a lot of 11s and a lot of 9s, which meant that we got a ridiculous amount of wood. And then for me, the 8s as well, because for some reason I went on to there. But for Rory certs, and it wasn't that wood was necessarily more statistically likely, but there was a whole chunk of the game where we had so much wood and literally no clay until, is that 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I got another 17 cards I got 17 cards at one point. And the other thing I want to say about Catan is there's no hand limit, but there's the tension that if you're above a certain number, if you have more than 7, you might have to discard, but only if a 7 is rolled. So someone rolls a number 7, well, you have 17 cards, you better get rid of 8 of them. And now another 7 is rolled, well, you better get rid of half of your cards again because you're still above 7. And suddenly everything changes. And then the person who was on 12 cards or 11 or even 14 is laughing because, hey, that's brilliant. But that little, if I go from 7 to 8, like, there's that tension that, hey, it might be okay. I might be able to get through my rounds. And that tension of whether you will have to get rid of your resources pushes you to trade with the other people. That's a lovely thing, because you need asymmetric desires in a trading game, I think. And let's talk about the asymmetry for a moment. Let's talk about the fact that, clearly it's developed a bit here. I've focused all around the trees, and I've got not so much access to sheep. But like, if a 5 is rolled, sure, I'll get the sheep. But for lots of the game, it might be like, oh, you've got that, you've got the wheat, oh, maybe I'll get another thing over here to double up on wheat. Oh my gosh, I've got so much wheat now. And no one can have access to all the numbers. That's a key thing. No one can. There is variance in that. Sometimes I will get more stuff, sometimes you'll get more stuff, sometimes the other player will get more stuff, but no one has access to all the stuff. So it's a case of, okay, I've got this thing, you've got that thing. Well, sometimes you can work out an equitable deal. And then sometimes there's a ridiculous situation where you've got a ridiculous amount of wood and you say to someone, well, I will trade you 4 wood for your 1 sheep, and just so that I can get myself back below the hand count. And so some people are going to play a risky game where they're maybe at 10 cards, and once you're at 10 cards, you might as well, you're either going to go down to 7 or you want to go up to 14. And that's an interesting thing as well, because if I'm happy to go, once I'm above 7, I might as well keep on going even higher. And that's really, really interesting. Now, I do want to acknowledge that any trading game is inherently player dependent. Any trading game depends on the players being willing to make those trades. I've played games of Bonanza where even though it actively hurts you to play this thing, people aren't willing to give it away because it's like, hey, this is hurting you, and I'd rather hurt myself than help you. Even though there's like 5 other players, or however many other players, I can't remember what that goes up to, but like there's going to be other players. That's the key part of Bonanza. So it's not just a zero-sum game. And you can't have a 2-player trading game, because the whole idea of trading is that in theory, it's benefiting both of you. And so both of you are uplifted compared to the 3rd or potentially 4th, 5th, 6th player. And I feel like the more players there are, the more likelihood there is of trading. I've never played Catan with more than, I've definitely never played it with more than 4. I've never played a 5, 6 player expansion, but I would be really interested to try. And another key thing is you have to be willing to enjoy the variance. Now, I spent quite a bit of effort going in there and getting the 2-for-1 port for the wood between the 12 and the 9, if you can see that, because I had so much wood, and then I built it and I was ready to trade. And then, just as I got the thing for my final building, it all collapsed. I traded on their turn, I traded on their turn. I finally had all my resources that I needed for my settlements. I was going to build a settlement, trade my wood, trade my wood, trade my wood, until I could, boom, boom, check out how much I can do with this, like literally 14 wood. I could convert it into 7 of anything, which is ridiculous. And that would have blown me way into the lead with a really nice engine. Now, I think I should talk about the robber, because there is a strong positive feedback mechanism in the game. There's a strong sense of the better you're doing, the better you're going to do, because the more settlements, the more cities you have, the more chance that you're going to get more resources to give you more of these things. And also, if you've got development card, well, it's likely that you'll be able to threaten someone, and they might, but it's mainly the board presence. The board presence has this big virtuous cycle, you could call it. But then there is the slight catch-up mechanism, which is incredibly player dependent. Again, the game is mildly fragile, I would say. So if someone's saying, okay, you're in the lead, I'm going to put the robber on your place. I'm going to put the robber onto square 11 or square 8, because Bez, that's square 8. It gives you too much wood. That's just ridiculous. I don't want you getting so much stuff on your 8. And Bez, you're in the lead. I'm going to pick on you. That would make perfect sense. And it's also, in retrospect, during the game, I was kind of counting, oh, you're 1 point ahead of me. You're 1 point ahead of me. And that was honestly true. But actually, them being 1 point ahead of me when one person had the military card, one person had the longest road card, that kind of suggests that I've got more board presence. And it's the board presence that's going to keep escalating and keep pushing you into the lead. And so, how would... Yeah, this is the end game state. When that 11, 13 and desert kind of intersection, is where I built my settlement. I was on 9 points, and I did say, yeah, I could be on 9 points, but I managed to get the ore, the wheat, and I had enough bricks and wood in my hand that I was able to use both my ports to trade them for the things that I needed to upgrade to a city and win the game. It's definitely interesting about being able to block someone with the robber. That feels like a strong move. And sure, at that point, it was like city, city, house. So I would have gotten like 5 wood from that. And that is really powerful. So it was probably better for them to block the 11s and the 8s. But the 8 still managed to get me just enough resources. That was like, boom, I win. And there's a lovely story here. I don't think that Catan is a game that necessarily holds up to the highest level of tournament play. I mean, I might know that this might be a big sweeping statement, but I think that there's, again, trading games. I know that there's a world championship and everything, but trading games are really weird for the idea of tournament play when you kind of end up having weird motivations within each game if you're not really careful. And any free player game, I think, is just going to possibly not reward the best player quite as much. It's also about like, what are you looking for from the game? Like in a tournament, I just want to acknowledge this, given that they are having Settlers World Championships, and I know that there was a game where I think ran out of time and it had to be determined by die roll, and it's like, that's really not great at, UK Games Expo. Like, it was nothing to do with UK Games Expo, it was all to do with Catan. Just, I remembered this one story from someone who managed to make the final, and they were feeling a bit aggrieved. I do think that two-player games are like either where you're two teams, or one team against the game, and against the game you can have everyone drawing the cards at the same time, like they do for Pandemic, where you've got a stacked deck and everyone is playing against exactly the same odds, and so it's all about how you behave in the same situations. And I think that moving up to a free player game, moving up to a trading game, it makes it kind of inherently more casual, I think. I believe that games where there's higher interaction, any person who's going to be a sore loser, anyone who's feeling, oh, I should have won, this might not be a game for you. If you're saying, oh, I can't stand the luck. If you don't like dice, sure, this isn't a game for you. This is not a game where it's perfectly balanced. And that's part of the joy of it. Because without those dice, it would be flat. And don't get me wrong, there's something lovely about Go. I love abstract strategy games. But here, the dice, they might favor one player over the other, but they're not there to, oh, with this single die roll, one single die roll will win you the game. It's also about a large combination of die rolls. And if you get an entire game where there's 20 turns in a row where one person doesn't get anything, that's a story that fundamentally, that's kind of a test of, will you enjoy Catan? You have to be willing to accept that possibility. It is a game with the potential for meanness. It's a game with the potential for lots of luck. It's a game with the potential for weird things happening, where you spend half the game where literally no one has any clay, and then suddenly that was like the great wood flooding of 2022, and then suddenly you get all the wheat because the dice are now rolling differently. And that's the joy of dice. That's the joy of it, when you don't get a flat distribution. I know some people have changed it, so okay, you're playing with a deck of cards that's have 36 numbers, and you're not going to roll um, 4 times as many 12s as 8s, for example. So it says but even within that game, I mean, sure, house rule it if you want, if you think that that's a game that you will enjoy, but I would posit that to truly play Catan, to truly embrace the trading, the camaraderie, the rivalries, the is to also embrace the chaos, the variance, the fact that yes, you will have games, and honestly, this is probably the dice game, one of the dice games where I'm totally okay with it. I hate dice for the record, and not only would I, and yeah, I just have zero interest in playing this with anything other than dice. So I guess this has become a bit of a review. So let's see if I've got a bunch of banners. I don't know if I do. So yeah, would I still play? So let's do a quick summary. How does it play? Roll dice, get that many resources. Everyone gets those resources based on where they are. So if you rolled an 8, then you get resources. If you're on an 8, that brings about a sense of planning, a sense of managing the randomness. It plays where you're playing to try and manage the randomness. It plays like a stock market game. It plays like you're dealing on this cusp of information. It plays like you think there's going to be more 8s and 6s and fewer 12s and 11s, but that's not always true. Sometimes there's the most 9s randomly. It plays like a delicious, chaotic thing where you have to work together to get anything done. How was I introduced? I was like, this is one of the first games I ever played, and when I first got into modern board games, I looked online. I was like, "Oh wow, there's all these cool games that have been made in like the that I've never heard of. Settlers of Catan and Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne. These were some of the things that people said, oh, these are games to check out. And I looked them up. Ticket to Ride wasn't quite the thing. I did buy Ticket to Ride America at some point, but Catan and Carcassonne were the ones that really spoke to me. I played that a couple of times with friends, and I sold it because if I'm playing a trading game, I would prefer I'm the Boss. That's my personal tastes. I prefer I'm the Boss, which still has the randomness of the dice, but pushes that trading to the foreground. So every turn, there's a deal to be made. I'm the boss. But Catan, it's a fairly pleasant story. Settlers, there's the whole issues of colonialism. Would I still play it? Yeah, I would happily play it if someone was like, hey, do you want to play this? I've got it in my rucksack. I'd be like, yeah. But if there were other games on offer, I would typically prefer to try something that I've played before. But if two people really wanted to play, or if one person really wanted to play, then yeah, sure, I'd play it. I'm not going to suggest it, but I'd happily play. Who's it good for? It's good for someone who enjoys that variance, who enjoys that settling, who enjoys the feeling of growth, who enjoys the personal feeling of, hey, I've got these things on the board. I started off with very little, but now I've got more. And someone who doesn't mind a bit of direct, hey, I am stealing this from you. I loved the way that the dice bring about these strings of luck. I mean, I'm not going to call them good luck or bad luck, but the strings of so much wood, and then there's so much wheat, and then suddenly there's just towards the end of the game. Like, we never had too much clay, but I was like, oh wow, I've suddenly got 3 clay in like one round. That's ridiculous. And then I had to work out what to do with them. What don't I like? I mean, it's worth noting that the game is kind of fragile, and but that's all about your players. And final thoughts, it was a lovely day, and whilst yes, I'd happily play the game again, I owe it primarily to the people I was playing with. So thank you, Chris and Rory, for playing. It was lovely to see you. And to anyone out there who's like, hey, Catan, should I give it a go? Hopefully this has given you enough to make that decision for yourself. Because, anything's good for some people, not good for other people. Hopefully, I mean, I know there's a lots of reviews of Catan or whatever out there, but yeah, hopefully that's been interesting. So, yeah. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. And like the question that I want to ask everyone who's watching this is, have you played Catan? And what do you think of it? I mean, like if I had to bring it down to a number, I mean, personally, I'd give it like a really solid like 6.5, 7. Like I think it's a good quality game. I think that it, yeah, again, it doesn't set my world on light, and I think that yeah, I'm not going to carry on because I've just talked about that. So over to you. What are you up to? You can share bots, and if you want to, I'm going to go to jug it hair, get a quick shower, go playtesting, and I'm playtesting my abstract strategy game 2 players about making shapes to get special powers, to make bigger shapes, to get better powers, to make the biggest shape, to win the game. And I tested it 3 times on Fridays. So like on the first time I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. Oh, let's work out what shapes there are. Second time it was like a bit more consideration for all the special powers. Third time I tried an asymmetric variant. That wasn't, I don't think that's the path that I want for this particular game. But I might come back to an abstract strategy asymmetric game at some point. But yeah, I'm really excited now because I've boosted up the powers to make them more about building and less about destruction. So I'm very confident someone should win. Fingers crossed. And that's what we'll find out. So if there's anything you want to share or anything, let me know. I mean, I'm curious what you're up to. Otherwise, recap and wrap up before we finish up. So what did we say? Yeah, letting go of grudges is important, especially in a game of Catan. You can't be saying, oh, you stole from me, therefore I'm never going to trade with you. If that's the kind of person you are, if any of your friends are that kind of person, don't play Catan, because you need to be willing to accept, yeah, you stole from me, but I understand it's not personal and we will carry on. Catan, it's a lovely game. It's a joyous game. Sometimes you get interesting strings of luck, and if that's going to annoy you, don't play it. But that adds texture. That adds variance. That adds a motivation of, hey, do you want wood? I've got 7 wood. And like Rory every turn was like, hey, if anyone wants wood, I'm your person. And all of us were in exactly the same situation, which was absolutely delightful. Obviously, yeah, I'm biased because I won, but I really enjoyed that game. And yeah, Catan, it's a good game. So if you want to check me out, then Stuff by Bez in all of the places, and stuffbybez.com/streams will tell you what I'm up to tomorrow. Can't remember what I'm. Oh yeah, apparently tomorrow I'm talking about finding audiences. Like I'm going to ramble about that, and so don't expect something as well structured as my How I Make a Game, because finding an audience is still something that I'm personally working out. And then check out if you want to know future things, check them out. Share, spread the word. Thank you very much, everyone. And until next time, I hope you know whether games are for you and you can enjoy them for what they are and not what you want them to be. So until next time, lots of love and bye 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 bye. This is a goodbye song to do bye 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye 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 bye. This is the end of the show to do bye 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 bye. And now it's time to go to do bye 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.